going to use Desmos for as many as possible. After we finish 20, you will be using Desmos for as many as possible to prepare you for the SOL, as you will be using Desmos. For the first one, if you are looking for are these parallel perpendicular or neither, you're looking at the slopes. So if the slopes are identical, if they're the same, both positive, both negative, and the same, that would be parallel, but that's not the case here. If one is flipped and you have a positive and a negative, those would be perpendicular. Any other case would be neither. Let's say they both have the same number, but one is positive, one is negative, or they're both flipped, but they're both positive or both negative, or they have nothing to do with each other. Any of those would be neither. Questions on that?
So in the box, you just write perpendicular.
Mm-hmm. If you were to graph this, you would see that they cross and that they make a T. For number 3, if we are solving this equation, we have to isolate the absolute value bars, get rid of everything outside, so subtract 2. And then divide both sides by 4. And because this equals a negative, the absolute value bars are isolated, and it equals a negative, we cannot keep solving this. This is no solution. So if you have anything more than that, get rid of it, erase it, cross it out. If this equals a positive number, we could drop the absolute value, set it equal to a positive and negative, keep going and solve, but it does not, so we could not. Questions on that? If you had tried this in Desmos, if you put everything in, nothing would appear because it's no solution. But if this was a positive number, then you would get 1 or 2 solutions. Take out your word problem notes again from last class if you need another one. Use it again. So let's go ahead and read that one. You guys go ahead and read that one about the marching band. Aiden, do you have these?
Yeah.
Read the one about the marching band. And what's important there? Then you need another one. What's important there?
Trey sold 7 poinsettias and 3 leaves and raised $201.
7 poinsettias and 3 wreaths and raised $201.
Molly sold 4 poinsettias and 6 wreaths and raised $252.
And we're looking for
How much is a poinsettia?
so we need 2 variables. What are we going to call it? Call them. Sure. P and W. And P and W represent what?
Number of poinsettias.
So not number of, but cost of each one. So the cost of a poinsettia, the cost of wreath, the cost of a wreath. Right, and then we need to set up our 2 equations. What would that look like? equals
201.
201, and the other one?
4b plus 6w equals 252.
So then to solve, this would be a good elimination problem, so we can eliminate. Because we're looking for how much is a poinsettia, we got rid of our w's, our reads, then we should be left with poinsettia. But if we were eliminating, we need to make these the same. How could we do that?
Times the 3 by 4.
Okay, to get 12, you could change them both. You could just change one. That's completely up to you. But if you want to go that route, we can multiply the first one by 4 and the second one by
2.
So you could have this multiply the first one by 2 to make it 6 instead of 12, but that's okay. So let's do that. 28p plus 12w equals 804. And 8p plus 12w equals, what is that? I want to say 4, 6, but I could be wrong. Someone calculate that. What is that number? Where do we go?
504.
504. I was close. 504. Alright, and then to eliminate our w, we would get what? Or, I'm sorry, we would do what? We subtract, we get 20p equals 300. And if we divide, p equals and that would be $15. Questions on that one? For this next one, it'll look familiar because we did problems like this, but when we were doing it, we did not call it systems of equations or that we were solving systems of equations. So for the length of a rectangle, the length of a rectangle is 1 inch less than 3 times its width. If the perimeter of the rectangle is 54 inches, find the length. What's important there? Okay. What else? The length of a rectangle is 1 inch less than 3 times the width.
Perimeter of the rectangle is 54 inches.
So let's set up our variables first. Because we're dealing with length and width, it's just going to be L and W. for length and width. If you want to be a little bit more specific, you can say length in inches, width in inches. Aiden, are you writing this down? And then, in general, there is a perimeter equation. Anyone remember what that equation is? For perimeter, short for rectangle, or square.
Length times width.
T equals 2L plus 2W. That's in general. Specifically for our problem, we know the perimeter is 54. So we can change P to 54. And then we need our second equation. And that's going to deal with that first sentence. How would we set that up? It's going to be L equals 1 inch less than 3 times its width. Say that again. 3W minus 1. So 1 less than, the 1 goes back, and then 3 times the width. So this one's set up really nicely for which type of solving? Substitution. However, when we substitute this back in, we're going to end up with just W and then have to go back and find L. So an extra step, but that's okay. So once you put that back in, go ahead and distribute and start to solve for W. What is W?
7.
7. 7 what?
Inches.
Inches. So notice that 7 is an answer, but that's not our answer because we're looking for length. So it's going to be 20. So we already know the direction, but I still want you to do the work to find L. We're going to go back and put 7 into our equation. To get 20 inches. And then what's nice about this is after we do this one, we're either going to do max 2 problems or minimum 1. Because after this it could end, or if we go up, we can go up here, and we would know the end. So we only have 1 or 2 more. We will see. Okay, so for this bottom one, Ariana's English test has 2 types of questions, multiple choice worth 2 points each, and short response worth 3 points each. If there are 43 total questions, and the test is worth 100 points, how many short response questions are there? What's important here?
Two types of questions.
Okay, and the 2 types are?
Multiple choice worth 2 points each.
And
And short response worth 3 points each.
okay.
There are 43 total questions. And the test is worth 100 points.
And we're looking for,
How many short response questions are there?
so what do we want to call our variables? I heard M and
S.
Sure. And M and S would represent what?
Multiple choice and short question.
What about it?
Words.
Not the word, because we know that.
Number of points.
Number of, not points, but how many multiple choice, how many short response. And then we need to set up our two equations. Remember that this has 4 numbers, so there's a specific way to set those up. What would that look like? Or at least one of the equations. Or start off with, what are your two totals?
43 and 100.
Okay, so we know our two equations, one is going to equal 43 and the other is going to equal 100. The other two numbers we have are going to go with one of them. We have to figure out which one. Which one do you think? Rosa, Damian, do either of you have an idea as to how to set up one of the equations? So don't talk. So we know our variables are number of questions. Which of these totals represents total number of questions?
43.
43. So we would put those two and add them together for 43. Which means the last one is going to be set up like
2 M plus 3S.
plus 3S equals 100. Number of, or the points that it's worth times however many questions there are. And then same thing for short response would give you the total number of points. Great. Do we want to solve this by substitution or elimination?
Substitution.
If we're solving by substitution, we need to find how many short response questions there are. So if we solve for M, get M by itself, when we put it back in, we will have just S. So if I get rid of this S, we have 43 minus S. M equals 43 minus S. And then we can substitute that equation back in. And distribute and solve for S. That does say 3S, not 3, 5. I didn't change the color. So when we solve for S, we get what? Fourteen points. be our last one, because regardless, we know which direction we will end up going. For this one, Ben and Landon took turns driving on their recent 820-mile road trip. Ben averaged 60 miles per hour, while Landon averaged 66 miles per hour. If the trip took them 14 hours, how many hours did Landon drive? What's important there? The quicker we get through this, the quicker you guys can do practice.
Ben averaged 60 miles per hour, while Landon averaged 56 miles per hour.
What else?
Trip took them 14 hours.
How would you say?
The trip took them 14 hours.
14 hours. What else?
How many hours did Landon drive?
And we're missing one thing.
Recent 820-mile road trip.
Okay, so then we need two variables. What do we want to call them? Aiden, give me two variables.
M.
And. Okay. Now we have to say which one is which. M is going to be for what? For who?
Ben.
Okay. So this wouldn't be number of miles though, because we know that. What don't we know? Number of hours. The number of hours each one drove. Then we have four numbers just like our last problem, but the total, one of the totals is put in a different place, so be mindful of that. How would we set up one of the equations?
800.
Or if you change your variables, whatever you use, plus 56h equals 820. The number of miles each one drove would equal the total number of miles. How would we set up the other one?
M plus H equals 14.
M plus H equals 14. Right, substitution or elimination?
Substitution.
Okay, and then if we have to find how many hours Landon drove, which is our H, we're going to get rid of H, solve for M. Substitute that back into the original. Solve, distribute, and solve. Is that right? 60 times 13. And then if you combine our like terms, have negative for H. And our H, when we solve, is what?
5.
5 hours. Also, we could have eliminated that we can't go back up to 10 or 16 or 18 or 7. So it would have to be one of those 3, but this would lead to 449 and this would lead to 12. So we are done. So then for the remainder of class, you have a couple different things to be working on. You could practice some more word problems by doing the ones we did not do. You could work on Delta Math for this, that's due Friday. You could work on other missing Delta Math from last week or 2 weeks ago. I'm going to be passing out a review for you to work on because your quiz is next class. Okay, your quiz is next class. So you could be working on that. If you want to work on retake work, today is the last day to finish retake work, so you can also do that. Tomorrow is the last day to retake if all of your retake work is done today. So you can come see me for that after I pass out your reviews.